Warchep Correspondent Log. Galactic Union Press Corps. Filed by Senior Observer Vreth Okalos. Species Ularari. Assignment. Embedded with Human Military Unit Designation Bravo 7. I want to be very clear about something before I begin this report. I volunteered for this assignment. Nobody forced me. I repeat, nobody forced me. I bring this up because, looking back now, from the safety of my pressurized medical bay, wrapped in 3 thermal sheets and sipping something warm and sweet, I genuinely cannot explain what I was thinking. My editor said, "Vreth, the humans are interesting." My editor said, "Vreth, it will be good for your career." My editor, I have decided, has never once in his long and comfortable life stood within 50 body lengths of a human soldier who has just been told the enemy is close. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. The planet Duravan 9 is by all measurable standards a miserable place. The gravity pulls slightly harder than what most Union species consider comfortable. The atmosphere is thick, humid and warm in the way that makes your scales feel like they are slowly cooking. The terrain is a maze of broken rock formations, dense root systems jutting out of orange soil, and shallow ravines that appear without warning. No reasonable species would choose to fight here. And yet, here we all were. The Keth Dominion, a hostile splinter faction that the Union had been watching nervously for about 6 standard years, had decided to fortify 3 major relay stations on Duravan 9. The Union response was a joint expeditionary force, several species, several military units, coordinated strike plan, very official, very organized. And then, because apparently the universe enjoys comedy, the coordination collapsed on day 2. A supply chain miscommunication meant that Torvan Heavy Armor Division was 3 days behind schedule. The Pelarai Air Support Wing was grounded due to a navigational software dispute between their chief engineer and the logistics AI. The Solkori Infantry Regiment, who are excellent fighters by the way, had simply gotten lost. Their navigation officer later blamed the maps. The maps blamed no one. That left Bravo 7, which meant it left the humans. I had met the unit 2 days prior at the forward staging camp. There were 14 of them. 14. I counted twice, because I assumed I had miscounted. I had not. 14 soldiers, 1 sergeant, and a very small mobile weapons platform they called Grinder, which I was told was a term of affection. The sergeant was named Dako Wrell, a tall human by their standards, with close-cropped dark hair and an expression that suggested he had long since made peace with the universe's tendency to be inconvenient. He shook my hand when we met, which is a human greeting that involves gripping each other's forelimb firmly, and looked me in the eye and said, simply, "Try to keep up." I laughed. He did not laugh. I stopped laughing. The briefing was held around a portable holographic table at the edge of camp. Sergeant Wrell laid out the objective with the calm efficiency of someone describing a grocery errand. 3 relay stations. Controlled approach corridors. Keth defensive emplacements at each perimeter. Estimated Keth garrison per station 40 to 60 soldiers. A young Yulhari logistics aide beside me did the math quietly, and then looked at me with an expression I recognized. It was the same expression I was making. One of the human soldiers, a compact woman named Lexa Dur, caught us staring. She smiled. It was a perfectly pleasant smile. It did not comfort me at all. "We've hit worse numbers," she said cheerfully. "Reku, remember that time on Vaskar Station?" A large human soldier to her left, Reku Bann, snorted loudly through his nose. "That was worse, yeah. See?" Lexa said, looking back at me. "Worse." I did not ask about Vaskar Station. I made a professional decision not to ask about Vaskar Station. They moved out at 0400 hours, in full darkness, across 3 kilometers of broken terrain. I had been issued a light armor vest, and told to stay behind the second line. I agreed to this immediately and enthusiastically, and for the first kilometer I thought, this is fine. They move quietly for their size. They communicate in short gestures and half-whispered numbers that I quickly realized were coordinates. No wasted motion. No unnecessary sound. I began to think that perhaps the fearsome reputation of human soldiers was somewhat exaggerated. Then the Keth patrol found us. It was a 6-soldier sweep team, and they came over a ridge to our left without warning. There was a fraction of a second, the kind of pause that exists between recognition and action, where every living thing involved simply processed what was happening. The Keth soldiers raised their weapons, and the humans were already moving. I do not have adequate words for what I witnessed. In my species, combat response involves a conscious assessment period. You observe, you evaluate, you select a response. It takes perhaps 2 to 3 seconds, which for you already is considered fast. The humans had no such period. They were in motion before the threat had finished becoming a threat. Sergeant Wrell went left. Lexa went right. Reku Bann moved forward, directly forward, which struck me as completely unreasonable, and the 3 soldiers behind him fanned outward with the synchronized precision of creatures who shared a single nervous system. 11 seconds. The engagement lasted 11 seconds. I stood behind a rock formation with my recorder running and my mouth open and watched 11 seconds rewrite everything I thought I understood about biological combat response time. When it was over, Sergeant Wrell looked back at me, calm, level, like he had just stepped around a puddle. "You good?" he asked. I checked myself for injuries I might have forgotten to notice. I said, "Yes, good," he said. "Station 1 is 400 meters ahead. Try to keep up." He had said that before. I was beginning to understand it was not a suggestion. War Correspondent Log. Vreth Okalos. Ulari Press Corps. Entry 2. Duravan 9. Filed from a location I can only describe as too close to everything. Let me tell you about Station 1. Actually, let me first tell you about the 400 meters between our position and Station 1, because those 400 meters deserve their own entry in whatever historical record eventually documents this catastrophic career decision I made. The terrain between the patrol site and the first relay station was not kind. Shallow ravines cut across the path at irregular angles, loose gravel on hard rock, root systems erupting from the soil at knee height, which for me meant waist height, which meant I spent a significant portion of that walk in a state of controlled falling. The humans moved across it like it was a flat surface. No hesitation, no adjustment. Reku Bann actually vaulted a root cluster without breaking stride, and then had the absolute nerve to glance back and check if I was keeping up. I was not keeping up. I was doing my best. These are not the same thing. Station 1 came into view through a gap in the rock formations at exactly 0447 hours. I know the exact time because I checked my recorder compulsively during the final approach, partly for documentation purposes, and partly because having something to do with my hands kept me from making noise. The station was a low, reinforced structure, angular and ugly in the way that military architecture tends to be. Perimeter lighting ran along 2 elevated guardrails. I counted 4 external sentries from our approach angle, with the reasonable assumption that there were more I could not see. A mounted energy cannon sat on a raised platform near the main entrance. Heavy. Fixed. The kind of weapon that made a very loud statement about how welcome visitors were. Sergeant Wrell crouched beside me behind a wide rock shelf and studied the layout for approximately 40 seconds. His eyes moved in slow, methodical sweeps. Left rail. Right rail. Entrance. Cannon platform. He did not consult a device. He did not ask for input. He simply looked, the way a predator looks at something it has already decided belongs to it, and then turned to his unit and began moving his hands in that quiet gesture language they used. I watched the 14 soldiers reorganize themselves in total silence into 3 groups. It took about 20 seconds. I have attended Union military coordination briefings that lasted 6 hours and achieved less clarity than what those humans communicated with their hands in 20 seconds. Lexa caught my expression and gave me that pleasant smile again. I had stopped finding it comforting. I had started finding it alarming, which I think was the correct response. They went in at 0452. Group 1, Wrell and 4 soldiers, approached the left perimeter in a low, fast movement that used every shadow and rock formation along the route. Group 2, Lexa and 4 others, circled wide to the right in a path that should have taken them fully into the open for at least 30 meters. I watched them go and thought, that is exposed. That is completely exposed. They will be seen. They were not seen. I still do not fully understand how they were not seen. They moved with a kind of weight distribution that seemed physically improbable. Fast, but not loud. Low but not slow. The Keth sentry on the right rail looked directly at the area they were crossing and saw nothing, because they were already past it by the time his eyes arrived. Group 3, Reku Bann and 3 others, did not go around anything. Reku Bann's group went straight at the cannon platform. I wanted to file a formal objection. I had no standing to file a formal objection. I pressed myself against the rock shelf and watched and tried to breathe quietly. The next 40 seconds were the loudest 40 seconds of my professional life, and I once covered the Pellerai orbital bombardment campaign from a forward press vessel. That was loud. This was different. This was the specific personal kind of loud that your body produces when it understands that violence is occurring at very close range, and that the rock shelf you are hiding behind is not technically guaranteed to be sufficient. Controlled bursts. Coordinated entry points. No wasted movement. The Keth garrison at Station 1 had 43 soldiers, according to the post-operation count. 43 trained fighters in a fortified position with a mounted heavy weapon. Bravo 7 secured Station 1 in 6 minutes and 14 seconds. 6 minutes, 14 seconds. I crept forward. When Sergeant Wrell gave the all-clear signal, I passed through the main entrance and looked at what remained of a fortified Keth garrison and stood very still for a moment while my brain renegotiated its understanding of several things. Wrell was already at a wall-mounted console pulling station data onto a portable drive. He had a shallow burn across his left forearm that he had not mentioned and was not treating. Lexadur was checking each of her soldiers the way a mechanic checks a machine, quick and efficient and professionally detached. Reku Bann was eating something from a small sealed pouch, leaning against a wall looking completely relaxed. 2 more stations, Reku said, noticing me. He offered the pouch. Want some? I looked at the pouch. I looked at him. I looked at the room around us. What is that? I asked. Dried mango, he said. It is very good. Stations 2 and 3 fell in the same shift. By the time the Torvin Heavy Armor Division arrived 3 days later, Bravo 7 had secured all 3 relay stations, extracted 17 pieces of Keth intelligence data, dismantled the mounted weapon platforms, and set up a functioning forward operations post with a functioning coffee station, which the humans considered a logistical priority of the highest order. General Sovath of the Torvin Division walked through Station 1 with the expression of a soldier who had prepared a very impressive entrance speech and arrived to find the party already over. He looked at Sergeant Wrell. He looked at the secured facility. He looked at the 14 humans who were variously resting, eating, and arguing about something called the best way to make eggs. You did all of this, Sovath said slowly. 14 soldiers. 15, Wrell said, nodding toward me. He kept up. I want to be precise here. I did not by any objective standard keep up, but I understood what he was doing, and I appreciated it more than I will ever admit in an official report. General Sovath turned back to his very large, very heavily armored division and said nothing for a long moment. Then he said quietly, to his aide, next time, we keep up with them. His aide, who had also been reading my preliminary field notes, looked at the humans and then back at the general. Sir, the aide said carefully, I will need more information about Vasker Station first. I filed this report from the medical bay. The burn on my left leg is minor. The doctor says it will heal completely. The doctor also says my cardiovascular readings suggest I ran considerably further and faster than my species profile recommends for my age group. I told her I was embedded with human soldiers. She stopped asking questions. She understood. End of war correspondent log. Vreth Okalos. Ulhari Press Corps. Durovan 9 campaign. Status complete. Personal note. Request reassignment. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere with no humans. Somewhere where nobody says try to keep up like it is a reasonable thing to say. Request denied. Editor says the humans have another operation next month. I have decided to ask about Vasker Station.